The first thing Eli Bennett noticed when he walked into his father's dining room was that Noah Reed still sat with one hand wrapped around a water glass when he was uncomfortable. 6 years disappeared in less than a second. Eli stopped beneath the doorway with his overnight bag still hanging from his shoulder, and Noah looked up from the table. He was older, obviously, broader through the shoulders, quieter somehow, with sawdust caught near the cuff of his dark work shirt. But the way his fingers tightened around the glass was exactly the same. Noah stood. "Hey, Eli." Eli had spent the 2-hour drive from Washington thinking about wedding schedules, unfinished museum emails, and whether his father had remembered to order enough wine. He had not prepared for this. "Hey, you made good time," David said, crossing the room to hug him. Traffic was only moderately hostile. Eli hugged his father back, then looked at Rachel. "You could have mentioned there was a surprise contractor at dinner." Rachel's expression changed immediately. "Oh, I thought David told you." David looked guilty. "I thought Rachel told you." From the table, Eli's younger sister Paige lifted her wine glass. "And this is why I manage family logistics." Noah almost smiled. Eli noticed that too. Rachel explained that Noah had built the ceremony benches and the freestanding seating chart frame for Saturday's wedding. He was there to review the final installation schedule because one delivery had changed. The explanation was perfectly reasonable, which somehow made Eli feel more ridiculous for needing one. "Right," he said. "Of course." Dinner settled into something that was not exactly awkward, but required everyone to work slightly harder than usual. David talked about the weather forecast. Rachel discussed the florist. Paige described a pediatric patient who had recently informed her that occupational therapy would be improved by dinosaurs. Noah answered questions about the benches with an ease Eli did not remember from their early 20s. His voice was steadier now. His hands were rougher. When Rachel asked whether the seating frame could be moved indoors if it rained, Noah said, "Absolutely. I designed the base for either surface." Eli looked at him before remembering not to. Noah caught the glance anyway. Exhibit designer approval? Pending documentation. Still terrifying. Standards matter. Paige kicked Eli lightly beneath the table. Eli reached for the salt and moved it half an inch toward the center. Across from him, Noah watched the adjustment. It was centered. Eli looked at him. It was absolutely not. "I built furniture for a living. And I design museum exhibits. So we are both professionally annoying." Rachel laughed first. Then David. Even Eli did, despite himself. For a moment, the years between them felt less like a wall and more like a room neither had entered in a long time. That feeling made Eli cautious. After dinner, Noah thanked Rachel, shook David's hand, and gave Eli a small nod before leaving. No lingering goodbye. No attempt to turn history into conversation. Eli told himself he was relieved. Then Rachel's phone buzzed. She read the message and sighed. "Our Thursday setup crew just lost 2 people. Paige immediately said, "I can come after work." David had an inspection across town. Rachel looked toward Eli. He already knew what she was going to ask. "What time?" "9 tomorrow morning. I will be there." Rachel smiled. "Thank you." Eli picked up his overnight bag and started toward the stairs. "Noah will be bringing the benches around the same time," she added. Eli stopped for half a beat, then continued upward. "Of course he will." At 9 the next morning, Eli arrived at the greenhouse venue with coffee in one hand and the unreasonable confidence of a man who had spent 8 years professionally telling people where objects should go. Noah was already there. The wide doors stood open to the mild October air, and morning light poured across the concrete floor while Marcus guided a furniture dolly carrying one of the wooden ceremony benches inside. Noah wore a faded work shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, dark jeans, and a pencil tucked behind one ear. He glanced at Eli's coffee. "You came prepared. I was told there would be manual labor." Rachel appeared from behind a stack of folded chairs carrying a floor plan. "There will also be opinions." "Even better." She handed Eli the plan and pointed toward the ceremony area. "I need the center aisle wide enough for comfortable traffic, but we cannot crowd the side rows." Eli studied the room automatically, measuring sight lines with his eyes. Noah crouched near the first bench and pulled a roll of blue painter's tape from his pocket. "I marked the original positions yesterday." Eli walked to the center aisle. "This one needs to move 6 inches left." Noah looked up. "It does not." "It does." "I measured it." "Then measure it again." Marcus stopped pushing the dolly. "I have known him for 4 years. and I strongly recommend not saying that. Noah gave him a look, then stretched his tape measure across the floor. Eli waited. Noah checked the number twice. 6 inches. Eli took a slow drink of coffee. Would you like a moment? Deeply. Marcus laughed and returned to the truck. For the next hour, Eli and Noah slipped into a rhythm that felt strangely easy. Eli marked bench positions with blue tape, thinking about guest movement and sight lines. Noah checked floor clearance and weight distribution before Marcus moved each piece. They disagreed twice, measured 3 times, and discovered both of them were right often enough to remain irritating. When Eli placed a tape marker near the front row, Noah glanced at it. That is not centered. Eli looked down. It absolutely is. Interesting. Do not weaponize my own standards against me. Too late. By late morning, the ceremony layout was nearly finished when Rachel received a call about the seating chart frame. The hardware supplier had shipped the wrong bracket size. Noah crouched beside the unfinished frame, studying the mounting points. I can fabricate replacements at the shop, he said, but that costs us most of the afternoon. Eli set down his coffee and knelt beside him. What load are these carrying? Noah looked at him, then showed him the back of the frame. Mostly lateral stability. The base carries the weight. Eli traced the mounting geometry with one finger. Then you do not need the original bracket shape. Noah was quiet for a second. He pulled the pencil from behind his ear and handed it to Eli. Show me. Eli sketched directly on the cardboard packaging. Noah adjusted one angle, Eli changed another, and 10 minutes later Marcus was heading to a nearby hardware store for standard steel corner braces they could modify on site. Rachel stared at the two of them. Should I be worried that you solved that without arguing? Yes, Noah said. Eli nodded. Extremely. By noon, sunlight had warmed the greenhouse and the benches formed clean rows across the floor. Eli stepped backward to inspect them. Beside him, Noah folded his tape measure. For the first time since dinner, Eli was not thinking about the man Noah had been 6 years ago. He was watching the one standing next to him now. Then Rachel's phone rang again, and she looked toward Eli with an apologetic expression. I need someone to pick up the finished signage frame tomorrow. Noah wiped sawdust from his hands. It will be at my studio. Eli looked at the blue tape covering the floor, then at Noah. Send me the address. Noah's studio occupied a converted brick warehouse 15 minutes from Eli's father's house, with tall windows, scarred concrete floors, and the clean smell of fresh cut wood hanging in the air. Eli arrived Friday morning expecting to grab the seating chart frame and leave. Instead, he stopped just inside the open workshop door while Noah stood beside a long walnut table, talking a younger employee through a set of drawings. If we move the support here, you solve the sag but create a problem at the joint, Noah said. He did not take the pencil from the employee or redraw it himself. He waited. The employee studied the page, erased 2 lines, and tried again. Noah nodded. There you go. Eli looked away before Noah noticed him watching. It was strange seeing someone from your past in a room you had never known, surrounded by proof of all the years that happened without you. Samples of oak and walnut covered one wall. Half-built restaurant banquettes sat near the back. On a work table, detailed drawings were clipped beneath a label reading Boutique Hotel Renovation. Marcus spotted Eli first. Washington standards have arrived. Noah turned. Hide anything that is not centered. I heard that. That was the goal. Noah crossed the workshop and nodded toward the finished seating frame. It is ready. I just need to wrap the corners. Eli set his laptop bag on a clear section of workbench. Rachel said there was no rush. Dangerous information to give someone at my shop. While Noah wrapped the frame, Eli opened his laptop to answer a museum email. A floor plan for the proposed climate science gallery filled his screen. Noah glanced over while reaching for packing material. That is what you are working on. Potentially. I am supporting the proposal right now. Eli zoomed into an interactive exhibit zone. If it gets approved, they are choosing a lead designer. You? Maybe. Noah studied the screen without touching it. I thought museum exhibits were mostly display cases. Eli looked offended. I am going to pretend you did not say that. Noah smiled. Educate me. Eli showed him the visitor path, interactive stations, accessibility clearances, and fabrication notes. Noah asked practical questions, good ones, and Eli found himself answering more enthusiastically than he intended. You really want this, Noah said. Eli paused. Yeah, I do. Then I hope you get it. The words were simple, without hesitation. Eli closed the laptop halfway. What about that? He nodded toward the hotel drawings. Noah leaned against the workbench. Possible 12-month subcontract. Built-ins, banquettes, lobby pieces. Biggest job the studio has been offered. That sounds huge. It is. Are you taking it? Noah glanced toward the busy workshop. Still running numbers. Eli wanted to ask what was making him hesitate, but Marcus called from across the room about a measurement. Noah answered, then returned to tap the wrapped seating frame. Ready. Together they carried it toward Eli's car. At the curb, Eli lowered his end carefully. Noah adjusted the protective blanket around one corner. See, seems to fit you, he said. Eli's hand stopped for half a second. 6 years ago, Noah had said something different with almost the same calm certainty. You should go. This is good for you. Eli shut the rear hatch. Richmond seems to fit you. Most days. Noah stepped back from the car. Neither sentence was unkind. That was what made them difficult. Eli opened the driver's door, then looked across the roof. See you at rehearsal? Noah nodded. I will be there early. Rain plan. Of course there is a rain plan. There are several. Eli smiled despite himself. Now you are speaking my language. As he drove away, the seating frame quiet behind him, Eli realized he had spent the morning discovering how much of Noah's life he no longer knew. What unsettled him more was how naturally he wanted to keep learning. By Friday evening, the rain had moved from possibility to probability. Eli found Rachel standing inside the greenhouse with her phone in one hand and a weather app open like it had personally betrayed her. 60% at ceremony time, she said. I am choosing not to take that personally. Good. Weather responds badly to confrontation. Across the room, Noah was already unrolling blue painter's tape. Indoor layout B, he said. We lose the garden aisle, move 2 bench rows, and rotate the ceremony table. Eli set down his jacket. The back row will have a terrible sight line. Noah looked over. Hello to you too. Hello. The back row will have a terrible sight line. Rachel pointed between them. Fix it. I have a rehearsal to rehearse. An hour later, the family and wedding party had gone to dinner, but Eli and Noah remained beneath the greenhouse string lights, shifting the final markers for the backup plan. Outside, wind moved through the dark garden. Inside, strips of blue tape crossed the concrete floor like an unfinished diagram. Eli measured from a support column. Do not use that wall as your reference. Noah, pencil tucked behind his ear, looked offended. I know. It is uneven. I know. You used to measure from uneven walls. Noah stared at him. I was 21. Structural geometry does not care about youth. Noah laughed and crouched to move a tape marker. A minute later, he patted his shirt pocket, then his jeans. Where did I put my pencil? Eli pointed at Noah's ear. Noah reached up, found it, and sighed. You remembered that? Apparently some information refuses to become useful. The joke faded into an easier silence. Eli stepped back to check the aisle. Noah adjusted one marker without being asked. They had spent years apart, yet their bodies still seemed to remember how to share a project. Eli scanning the whole room. Noah solving whatever was directly in front of him. That familiarity should have been comforting. Instead, it made Eli aware of everything he did not know. Can I ask you something? Noah stayed crouched. That depends heavily on the question. Eli looked toward the dark garden beyond the glass. Did you ever regret staying? Noah's hand stopped over the tape. He did not ask what Eli meant. Richmond, the apprenticeship, the studio, the life that had continued here. Sometimes, Noah said. He stood and brushed dust from his jeans. Mostly when the studio was new and I was doing invoices at midnight because I could not afford help. Or when a client changed an entire built-in after I had already ordered the wood. Eli smiled faintly. That sounds healthy. Very. Noah rolled the tape between his palms. But mostly I regretted assuming staying meant standing still. Eli looked at him. Noah's gaze moved around the greenhouse, toward the benches his studio had built. I used to think leaving was how people became something new. Turns out you can change in the same place. Eli absorbed that without knowing what to do with it. He had spent years thinking of Richmond as the road he had not taken, and Noah as part of the life attached to it. The man standing beside him did not look like someone who had been waiting in place. Noah broke the silence by pointing toward the nearest tape marker. That is not centered. Eli looked down. It is centered. Are you sure? Eli pulled out the tape measure. Noah smiled before Eli even checked. You are unbearable. And yet you measured. A light rain began tapping softly against the greenhouse roof. Eli looked toward the rows they had prepared for a ceremony that might have to change location overnight. Noah followed his gaze. Neither mentioned the past again. But when they switched off the string lights and walked toward the parking lot together, Eli realized the question he had asked about Richmond had not really been about Richmond at all. The rain committed sometime before sunrise. By 8 Saturday morning, water streamed down the greenhouse glass, while Rachel stood in the center of the ceremony space holding 2 coffees and looking remarkably calm for someone whose outdoor wedding had just moved indoors. "Layout B," she said. Eli took 1 coffee. "Layout B." Noah was already moving the first bench with Marcus. Within minutes, the greenhouse became controlled chaos. Florists relocated arrangements. Paige redirected arriving family members. David carried boxes until Rachel confiscated one and reminded him that he was supposed to get married today, not join the setup crew. Eli moved through the room with blue painter's tape, adjusting guest flow and signage positions while Noah handled the benches. Near the center aisle, Eli stopped. Noah had placed the first row farther from the ceremony area than their plan showed. "This is off. It is intentional." Noah pointed toward the widened passage beside the aisle. "David's aunt uses a walker. She will need room to turn without catching the bench." Eli looked at the space, then at Noah. Nobody had mentioned it that morning. Noah had simply remembered from the rehearsal. "Right," Eli said softly. "Good call." Later, Noah carried the seating chart frame toward the entrance and found Eli crouched beside it with his laptop balanced on one knee. Problem: Rachel is worried people will follow the garden signs out of habit. Eli had already redesigned the directional cards for the indoor route. "I sent the files to a print shop 10 minutes away. Paige is picking them up." Noah glanced across the room toward Rachel, who was laughing with David beneath an arch of greenery. "You did not tell her. She has enough to think about." Noah looked back at Eli, and something quiet passed between them. Not nostalgia, recognition. By late morning, the room was ready. Marcus left to change for the ceremony. Rachel disappeared with Paige. David was upstairs somewhere being repeatedly instructed not to check the weather. For the first time all morning, the greenhouse became still. Eli and Noah walked the center aisle together, checking the final tape marks before guests arrived. "That bench is not centered," Eli said. Noah did not even look. "It is centered. You have become dangerously confident. Occupational hazard." Eli smiled, but when they reached the front, he stopped. Rain whispered against the glass overhead. "When I left Richmond," he said, "I thought you were relieved." Noah turned toward him. The humor disappeared from his face. "Relieved? You made everything so easy. The internship, DC. All of it. You kept telling me I should go." Noah stared at the blue tape beneath their shoes. "I thought making it easy was the kind thing." Eli let out a small breath. "It was easy. That was the problem." Noah looked up. Eli did not sound angry. 6 years had worn the sharpest edges off that feeling. "I kept waiting for you to give me one reason staying might matter to you," Eli said. "You never did." Noah's expression shifted with something close to disbelief at himself. "I thought asking you to stay would make your opportunity about me. And I thought not asking meant there was no us in your future." Neither spoke for a moment. Somewhere beyond the greenhouse doors, a car arrived on wet gravel. Noah rubbed his thumb across the edge of the tape roll. "I didn't want there to be an us." Eli's chest tightened, but not in the way he expected. The sentence did not repair the past. It changed its shape. He looked at Noah and understood, maybe for the first time, that they had not lost each other because one cared less. They had each made a decision on the other man's behalf and called it kindness. Voices approached outside. The wedding was beginning. Noah stepped back, but his eyes stayed on Eli. "We should finish." Eli nodded. "Yeah." They walked down the aisle together, pulling up the temporary tape markers guests no longer needed. At the doors, Noah held out the roll. Eli took it, their fingers brushing briefly. Behind them, everything was finally in place. Between them, almost nothing was. The wedding went on without asking either of them to solve anything. By Saturday evening, the rain had softened to a mist, the greenhouse glowed beneath strings of warm lights, and Eli watched his father dance with Rachel between the benches Noah had built. Noah spent most of the reception with Marcus and several mutual acquaintances, but every so often Eli caught his eye across the room. Neither looked away quite as quickly as before. Sunday was easier. There were centerpieces to pack, rental chairs to count, leftover cake to distribute, and enough practical work to keep everyone moving. Eli and Noah carried boxes together, traded dry comments about the amount of glassware required for one marriage, and once reached for the same roll of blue painter's tape without either pretending the moment meant nothing. It felt almost dangerously normal. Then Monday arrived. Eli was drinking coffee at his father's kitchen counter when his phone lit up with an email from the museum. Leadership wanted him back in Washington Tuesday afternoon for the final presentation on the Climate Science Gallery. If the proposal moved forward, the lead designer would be named shortly afterward. Eli read the message twice. This was what he wanted. He had worked toward it for years. Still, his first thought was that Tuesday suddenly felt too soon. Across town, Noah sat with Marcus at the studio while a spreadsheet filled the monitor between them. The boutique hotel subcontract was financially stronger than Noah had expected. 12 months of built-ins, banquettes, lobby furniture, and architectural millwork. It would require 2 additional hires and consume most of the studio's production capacity. "We can do it," Marcus said. Noah looked through the glass office wall at the workshop beyond it. "That is not the same as saying we should." "No, but it is a good problem." By afternoon, Noah was back at the greenhouse helping return the final rental decor when Eli arrived. Noah noticed immediately that something had changed. "You get an email?" Eli looked at him. "How did you know?" "You have checked your phone 4 times in 3 minutes." Eli slipped it into his pocket. "They want me in D.C. tomorrow for the final gallery presentation." Noah's face brightened. "That is great." "Yeah." Eli watched him. "It is." Noah stacked 2 empty crates. "You should take it if they offer it." The words landed between them with uncomfortable familiarity. Eli looked away toward the greenhouse doors. "Marcus send you the hotel numbers?" Noah paused. "This morning." "And they work?" Eli nodded. "Then you should take it." This time they both heard it. Noah stopped moving. Eli folded his arms, suddenly aware that 6 years earlier they had stood in different rooms and said almost the same things. "Go. Take it. This is good for you." They had believed support meant removing themselves from the decision. "That sounded familiar," Noah said quietly. Eli gave a humorless half-smile. "A little." Neither corrected it. Instead, they finished loading the crates into Rachel's car. On the drive back to Churchill, they stopped for sandwiches and ate outside because the afternoon had turned unexpectedly warm. Conversation stayed easy as long as they discussed the wedding, David's dancing, Paige's emergency stash of safety pins, or Marcus nearly dropping a box of champagne glasses. The moment either career came up, both became careful. Noah did not ask what Eli wanted beyond the gallery. Eli did not ask what Noah wanted beyond the hotel contract. Their old problem had returned wearing adult clothes and carrying better resumes. At the end of the meal, Noah tore a small strip of blue painter's tape from the roll still in his jacket pocket and stuck it to Eli's empty cup. "You missed one." Eli looked at it. "That is not centered." Noah smiled, but it faded quickly. Tomorrow, Eli would drive north. Soon Noah would make a decision that could shape an entire year. For the first time since seeing each other again, they were not being pushed together by a wedding schedule. Monday had arrived, and neither man knew whether there was room for the other in what came after. By Monday evening, the greenhouse looked less like a wedding venue and more like a room recovering from one. The flowers were gone, the rented linens had been packed away, and pale rectangles on the concrete showed where furniture had stood. Eli crouched near the ceremony area, pulling up strips of blue painter's tape while Noah worked from the opposite side. They had volunteered to finish the last cleanup because Rachel and David were leaving early the next morning for a short trip to Asheville. At least, that was the practical reason. Eli peeled up another marker. What did Marcus think about the hotel numbers? Noah kept his eyes on the floor. "He thinks we can handle it." "Can you?" "Probably." Noah gathered several pieces of tape into one hand. "We would need 2 hires. I would spend less time on custom work myself, but financially it makes sense." Eli waited for Noah to say whether he wanted that. Noah did not. "Then that is your answer," Eli said. Noah looked at him. The sentence sounded wrong the moment it left Eli's mouth, but Eli did not take it back. Noah folded the tape into a small blue square. "And the gallery is yours. If they offer it." "They will." "You do not know that." "I know your work." Eli almost smiled. Instead, he stood. "Then I guess we both know what we are doing." Noah's expression tightened slightly. "I guess we do." The greenhouse went quiet except for the soft scrape of tape lifting from concrete. No argument followed. That made it worse. 6 years ago, they had been younger, uncertain, and convinced that love meant refusing to become an obstacle. Now they had better jobs, clearer ambitions, and enough experience to recognize the pattern while still stepping directly into it. Eli reached the center aisle. One final strip of blue tape remained where they had marked the path for the ceremony. He hooked a fingernail beneath the edge and slowly pulled it free. The concrete underneath was clean and slightly brighter, a temporary line disappearing as if it had never been there. Eli stared at it longer than necessary. "That everything?" Noah asked. Eli looked around the empty greenhouse. "Yeah." They carried the trash outside together. At Eli's car, Noah put his hands into his jacket pockets. "Drive safe tomorrow." There it was again, a kind sentence that asked for nothing. Eli nodded. "Good luck with the contract." Another kind sentence. Another exit. Noah walked toward his truck, and Eli watched him go without calling him back. At David's house later, Eli packed his clothes into the same overnight bag he had carried upstairs Wednesday night. Paige leaned against his bedroom doorway. "You leaving first thing?" "8. You okay?" Eli folded a shirt that did not need folding. "I have a presentation tomorrow." Paige studied him, clearly recognizing the non-answer, but she only said, "Dad has travel mugs in the cabinet." Across Richmond, Noah sat alone at his studio desk with the hotel proposal open on his monitor. The numbers still worked. The opportunity was still good. None of that explained why accepting it suddenly felt like closing a door he had never admitted he wanted open. He thought about telling Eli 6 years ago that he should go, and about telling him almost the same thing that afternoon. Noah leaned back and covered his face with both hands. He had spent years believing that asking someone to consider him was selfish. Eli, meanwhile, had spent years treating practical conclusions like protection from disappointment. Different fears, same silence. Near midnight, Eli zipped his bag and set it beside the bedroom door. His keys rested on top. Washington was waiting. Noah's contract was waiting. Nothing stood in either man's way anymore. Eli looked at the packed bag and finally understood that this was exactly what frightened him. At 7:42 Tuesday morning, Eli carried his overnight bag downstairs, set it beside the front door, and stood there with his car keys in his hand. Washington was roughly 2 hours away if traffic cooperated. His presentation was not until the afternoon. For once, the extra time did not feel like something to optimize. He picked up his bag, loaded it into the car, and drove in the wrong direction. Noah's studio was already awake when Eli arrived. Through the tall windows, he could see Marcus crossing the workshop with a clipboard. Noah stood near a work table studying the hotel drawings. Eli almost stayed in the car. The version of him who had arrived in Richmond 6 days earlier could have produced 10 sensible reasons to keep driving. Instead, he went inside. Noah looked up. "Should you not be heading north?" Eventually, Eli stopped across the work table from him. Between them lay floor plans, with samples, and a roll of blue painter's tape. "I need to say something before I turn it into a scheduling problem." Noah set down his pencil. Eli took a breath. "I want to see what this could be." Noah did not move. "I am still going to Washington today. I still want that gallery. If they offer it, I want to take it." Eli glanced toward the drawings, then back at Noah. "But I do not want us to pretend those facts automatically mean there is no room for this. Not without even trying." Noah's expression softened, but Eli kept going. "I do that. I decide what is practical before I admit what I want, because then I never have to risk asking someone else to want it too." The workshop hummed quietly around them. Noah stepped closer to the table. "I want to try too." Eli let out a breath he had been holding since the greenhouse. Noah looked down at his hands. "And there is something I should have said 6 years ago." Eli waited. "I wanted you to stay." The words were quiet. "I thought saying that would be selfish. I thought if I loved you, I was supposed to make leaving easy." Eli swallowed. Noah met his eyes. "I am not asking you to stay now." "Good." Noah gave a small, uncertain smile. "That sounded terrible." "No, it sounded different." Eli looked toward the clock on the wall. "I really do have to go." "Then go give your presentation." Noah picked up the blue tape and tossed it lightly toward him. Eli caught it. "Why am I taking this?" "Professional support. This is $3 of painter's tape. Do not cheapen the gesture." Eli laughed, and the sound loosened something between them. He set the tape back on the table. "I will call you when I am done." "Okay." No promise beyond that. No solution to 2 cities. Just something neither had given the other before. The truth. Eli drove north. Later that morning, Noah sat down with Marcus and reopened the hotel proposal. I do not want to reject it, Noah said. But I do not want it taking every hour we have for a year either. Marcus nodded toward the spreadsheet. Then we changed the structure. They worked through phased production, outside subcontracting, and protected capacity for smaller custom projects. Noah was not redesigning his business around Eli. He was finally admitting what kind of business he wanted. That afternoon in Washington, Eli stood before museum leadership and presented the Climate Gallery without minimizing his ambition. When he walked outside afterward, October sunlight reflected from the museum windows. His phone was already in his hand before he reached the sidewalk. He called Noah. Noah answered on the second ring. How did it go? Eli smiled and kept walking. I think it went well. Centered enough for Washington? Barely. Noah laughed. Eli looked north along the busy street. Knowing Richmond was still 2 hours behind him and feeling, for the first time, that distance was a fact they could discuss instead of an answer they had already accepted. Friday afternoon, Eli was standing beside a full-scale cardboard mock-up of an interactive climate station when his supervisor found him. She held out one hand. Congratulations, lead designer. Eli stared at her for half a second before taking it. Seriously? Seriously. Do not make me regret it. He laughed, and 20 minutes later he was back at his desk looking at the project calendar. The gallery would keep him in Washington. There would be fabrication reviews, accessibility testing, contractor meetings, and months when leaving early on Friday would be impossible. He opened a message to Noah, deleted 3 overly complicated versions, and finally typed, I got it. Noah called immediately. You got it. I got it. That is huge. Eli could hear machinery in the background. What about the hotel? We sent back revised terms this morning. Phased production, some outside fabrication, and protected capacity for our custom work. Think they will agree? They already did. Eli smiled. Look at us making decisions. Disturbing. They talked for another 10 minutes, not about forever, but calendars. Eli had a museum review Wednesday. Noah had an installation the following Thursday. They could manage weekends most weeks and one midweek visit when work allowed. 3 months, then they would reassess. It was not romantic in the way Eli would have imagined romance at 22. It felt better. At 5:30, he closed his laptop, put an overnight bag in his car, and drove south because he wanted to. Richmond traffic slowed him near the river, and by the time he reached Noah's studio, the October sky had turned deep blue. The front workshop lights were still on. Noah was kneeling on the concrete floor beside a full-scale hotel banquette mock-up, placing strips of blue painter's tape around measurements while Marcus packed tools near the back. Noah looked up when Eli entered. His expression changed immediately, not with surprise exactly, but with the quiet pleasure of seeing someone who had said he was coming and actually arrived. How was traffic? A compelling argument against infrastructure. Welcome home. Noah paused. To Richmond. Temporarily. I am not making decisions for you. Eli laughed. Good recovery. Marcus lifted a hand from across the shop. Congratulations on the museum job. Thanks. I am leaving before either of you starts discussing alignment. He disappeared into the office. Eli walked around Noah's taped outline and studied it with exaggerated seriousness. That is not centered. Noah kept working. It is centered. I have concerns. Your concerns are incorrect. Eli set his overnight bag beside the work table. Noah glanced at it. You cannot leave that there. Someone will trip over it. I have been here 30 seconds. And already you are a workplace hazard. Eli looked down at the blue tape in Noah's hand. Fine. He took the roll, tore off 4 strips, and marked a neat rectangle on the concrete beside the work table. Then he placed his bag squarely inside it. There. Designated area. Noah stared at the rectangle. That is too small. It fits. Barely. Noah took the tape from him. He peeled up one side of the rectangle, moved it several inches outward, and pressed down a longer strip. Then he did the same at the bottom, making space beside the bag for shoes, a jacket, maybe another bag someday. Eli watched without saying anything. Noah sat back on his heels. Better. Eli crouched beside him and checked the line. It is not centered. Noah looked at him. It is not supposed to be. Around them, the workshop remained exactly what it had always been. Drawings waiting for Monday, hotel measurements on the floor, sawdust beneath a workbench. Eli's museum calendar waiting 2 hours north. Nothing had disappeared to make room for them. They had simply stopped treating each other as the thing that had to. Noah pressed the final strip of blue tape to the concrete, extending the temporary outline around Eli's overnight bag. And this time, Eli did not move it.